Coruscant did not sleep. It merely changed masks. At the highest levels above the cloud layer, where sunlight fractured against the transparisteel towers, senatorial speeders drifted between platforms in calm, orderly lines. The dome of the Galactic Senate glowed gold against the skyline, a symbol of democracy holding firm in the final year of the Clone Wars. Holonet anchors spoke of victory campaigns. Senators delivered speeches about unity. The Chancellor promised security. But thousands of levels below, the illusion thinned. Industrial sectors groaned with overworked power grids. Refugee camps spilled into freight corridors. Clones rotated through leave cycles with hollow eyes. The war had turned the galaxy's shining capital into a machine fueled by fear and exhaustion. And in Federal District Alrec, maintenance crews were not prepared for the sky to split open. It began as a distortion in mid-air above a mag-rail service platform, subtle at first, like heat rising from a hyperdrive coil. A dock supervisor squinted at the anomaly just as violet light spiderwebbed outward in jagged lines. The air screamed. Conduits ruptured. Repulsor lifts flickered and died. Then the fracture detonated. A shockwave rippled down the platform, hurling workers against durasteel walls. Cargo crates burst open, sparks rained from ruptured panels like artificial lightning. When the light collapsed inward, something fell out of it. A man struck the platform shoulder first, rolled twice, and slammed against a service pillar. Silence followed, broken only by the hiss of damaged circuits. The man lay still. Then he began to laugh, not in panic, not in pain, but in pure delight. It echoed strangely against the metal walls, high, theatrical, almost affectionate. The kind of laughter that suggested he'd been waiting for something unexpected his entire life. He pushed himself upright slowly, the brushing soot from a purple coat now scorched at the edges. His skin was chalk white, not powdered, not painted, but disturbingly pale beneath the grime. His green hair hung loose and wild. A smear of blood trailed from his lip where the impact had split it. He tasted it. He grinned wider. "Well," he said softly to no one, surveying the endless vertical abyss of Coruscant's undercity. "That's new." The dimensional fracture sealed behind him with a faint, mocking shimmer, but the Joker stood alone in a galaxy he did not recognize, and he smiled. He moved before authorities arrived. Instinct first, always instinct. He ducked into a maintenance corridor as emergency klaxons wailed in the distance. Clones would come, law enforcement would come. This place, whatever it was, clearly prized order. He followed signage he couldn't read but could intuit. Symbols repeated in patterns, transit markers, hazard warnings, government insignias. He didn't need translation. He needed context. A terminal blinked to life at the end of the corridor, half-functional despite the power surge. Holographic text scrolled in Aurebesh. He studied it, head tilted, watching the same news feed loop. War footage. White-armored soldiers firing at metal droids, a robed figure igniting a blade of blue light. The words, "Republic Offensive," flashed repeatedly. He didn't understand the language, but he understood power structures instantly. War meant centralized authority. A centralized authority meant fear. Fear meant leverage. He leaned closer to the projection as a bald, elderly man appeared at a podium, measured, calm, authoritative. Applause followed. The Joker's grin widened. "Oh, I like him!" He didn't know the name yet. He didn't need to. Above them all, unseen from this level, Chancellor Palpatine was delivering assurances that the Republic would endure. By the time clone troopers secured the blast site, the stranger was gone. He slipped into lower market levels where refugees bartered ration cubes for spare parts. The smell of engine grease mixed with alien spices. Neon signage flickered over gambling dens and cantinas filled with beings from 100 worlds. He observed, listened. Languages blurred together, but tone never lied. Frustration, resentment, exhaustion with the Senate's delays, rumors of corruption, senators profiting from prolonged war. His eyes sparkled. And democracy under strain was his favorite toy. He approached a vendor selling nutrient paste from a steaming cart and mimicked the currency exchange he'd watched moments earlier. A few stolen credits later, he had food and information. Holoprojectors replayed Senate debates. The words meant nothing yet. The emotions meant everything. Anger, division, pride. The Joker laughed quietly into his cup. No bats, he whispered to himself. No capes. No moral lectures. He looked up at the towering city that stretched beyond comprehension. Just politicians. A transport shuttle roared overhead, rattling the alleyway. Somewhere far above, the Senate dome gleamed like a crown. He didn't want to rule it. He wanted to see if it would collapse with a gentle push. He needed 3 things: language, chemistry, access. Language would come quickly, patterns were easy for him, chemistry would take longer. More, this galaxy ran on unfamiliar compounds. But fear toxins, laughing agents, those were merely formulas. Every civilization invented poisons. He just had to learn theirs. Access. That was the fun part. As night cycle lights dimmed across the lower levels, he found a data broker operating out of a repurposed cargo container. A Rhodian with twitching antennae and a blaster on the table. The Joker approached, smiling. "Hello," he said cheerfully, though neither understood the other's words. The Rhodian reached for the blaster. The Joker tilted his head and laughed, not loudly, just enough. There was something universal about that sound. The Rhodian hesitated. The Joker spread his hands, harmless, curious, unarmed. He pointed to the holoprojector behind the Rhodian, then to his own temple. Information. The Rhodian squinted. This stranger didn't look like a mercenary, didn't look like a refugee. He looked like trouble, which in the underworld of Coruscant was often profitable. Negotiations began, not through shared language, but through shared greed. Far above, in the highest spire overlooking the Senate district, Chancellor Palpatine paused mid-conversation. A flicker brushed the edge of his awareness, not in the Force exactly, but adjacent to it. A tremor not born of anger or fear. Something else. He dismissed his aide and stepped toward the viewport. The galaxy was moving exactly as he had designed it. The Jedi were distracted, while the Senate was compliant. The war was nearly ready to reach its final act. And yet, there was an interruption in the pattern, a ripple. He closed his eyes, searching deeper. The Force did not reveal a warrior, not a Sith, not a Jedi, something stranger, chaotic, unbound by prophecy. His lips curled faintly. "How curious," he murmured. In the Undercity, the Joker finally acquired his first translation device. He activated it, listened, understood. "Galactic Republic," he repeated slowly, savoring the words. "Clone army. Emergency powers. Chancellor." He threw his head back and laughed, loud and unrestrained. Emergency powers. Oh, this galaxy was already halfway to the punchline. He looked toward the distant spires piercing the sky. "Let's see," he whispered, eyes gleaming with wicked delight. "How serious you are about your little democracy." The game had begun, and Coruscant had no idea it had just invited its most dangerous spectator into the audience. Language came quickly. Within 3 standard days, the Joker could understand BASIC well enough to follow HoloNet broadcasts without the translation device. He learned by immersion, by sitting in overcrowded cantinas where senators were cursed between rounds of lum, and by eavesdropping on clone troopers who thought no civilian understood military shorthand. The Clone Wars were everywhere. Every screen displayed casualty projections. Every broadcast featured heated debate inside the vast chamber of the Galactic Senate. Senators from core worlds demanded stronger offensives. Outer Rim representatives begged for relief funding. Accusations of corruption simmered beneath polite rhetoric. The Joker didn't need to understand galactic history to grasp the central truth. This system ran on procedure. Procedure was slow. Slow systems broke under pressure. He grinned. He relocated upward, literally. Coruscant was vertical hierarchy embodied. The higher you climbed, the cleaner the air smelled. Industrial grime gave way to polished walkways and reflective glass. By the time he reached mid-level commercial sectors, security patrols were more frequent, but so were opportunities. He shaved the stubble from his chin using a stolen sonic razor. He acquired a tailored coat, still purple because he had standards, and cleaned the worst of the Undercity soot from his skin. When he stepped into the Senate district for the first time, no one saw a vagrant. They saw a minor core world eccentric, and Coruscant tolerated eccentricity. He blended into the outer reception halls where aides, lobbyists, and corporate representatives waited for appointments. Conversations flowed in cautious tones. Deals were discussed in half-sentences. He listened. A group of trade delegates argued over hyperlane taxation. A military contractor boasted about increased clone armor production. An idealistic junior senator from Chandrila spoke passionately about ending emergency powers granted to Chancellor Palpatine. The Joker's eyes sparkled at that. Emergency powers, temporary authority that had lasted 3 years. Temporary was such a flexible word. He made his first move not with violence but with introduction. Senator Veldrin Tosk of Brentol 4, mid-tier influence, pro-war, ambitious but insecure, was known for hosting small private gatherings in his district apartment. Nothing scandalous, just networking. The Joker secured an invitation by forging credentials from a minor shipping guild. The forgery wasn't perfect, but bureaucracy rarely checked details beneath prestige. The apartment overlooked the Senate dome, golden in the evening haze. Transparent walls displayed a skyline of flowing traffic, and distant thunderheads illuminated by orbital traffic lanes. Wine flowed. Laughter, real laughter, filled the room. The Joker circulated quietly at first, absorbing personalities. Tosk liked flattery. The Corellian aide liked gossip. A Celestan lobbyist liked leverage. He began small, offering a humorous observation about Republic inefficiency. Not accusatory, playful, self-aware. They laughed. He escalated, suggesting that the Separatists' real advantage wasn't droids, but decisiveness. No votes, no committees, just action, uneasy laughter. He leaned closer to Tosk. Of course, he added smoothly, decisiveness can be intoxicating. Tosk smiled thinly. We are not tyrants. Of course not, the Joker replied instantly, eyes gleaming. But if the public demanded safety over liberty, would you refuse them? That question lingered. He left it there like a seed planted in fertile soil. By the end of the night, he had acquired something far more valuable than access. He had doubt. Doubt was infectious. And he ensured his exit was memorable. Not dramatic, just slightly unsettling. A final toast where he raised his glass and said, "To order, however it comes." Some laughed, some did not. Meanwhile, in the Jedi temple overlooking the Senate district, Master Windu stood in meditation. The Force felt turbulent, not with darkness exactly, but with instability. Political tension radiated across Coruscant like static. Normally, the Jedi filtered such disturbances as byproducts of war, but this felt sharper, as though someone were plucking emotional strings deliberately. "War breeds fear," said Master Yoda softly behind him. "Yes," Windu replied, "but this feels guided." Yoda's ears twitched. "Clouded, the future is. Always has been." They did not yet know the source, only that something intangible had begun to shift. The Joker returned to his temporary apartment, paid for with subtly siphoned credits from a careless lobbyist's account. He stood before a large mirror. "No masks," he whispered to his reflection. "No gimmicks." He flexed his fingers experimentally. This galaxy worshipped systems, so he would attack systems. He activated a small chemical analyzer he'd purchased from a black market supplier earlier that day. On the table before him were samples, industrial solvents, medicinal compounds, a narcotic popular among core elites, different elements, different molecular structures. He scanned them carefully. One laughing gas required specific neurochemical disruption. He didn't yet have the right combination, but he would. Chemistry was universal. Fear was universal. Corruption was universal. He replayed Senator Tosk's hesitant expression in his mind and chuckled softly. Politicians didn't need bombs to fall apart. They needed pressure. He intended to apply it carefully, incrementally, until the Republic began arguing with itself in ways even Palpatine had not anticipated. In his private office high above the Senate chamber, Chancellor Palpatine reviewed intelligence briefings, trade disputes escalating, several senators shifting rhetoric unexpectedly, minor, isolated changes, but coordinated, no, random. His fingers tapped lightly against the armrest. The Sith thrived on manipulation, but this pattern did not feel Sith. There was no hunger for power behind it, only provocation, intriguing. He smiled faintly. "Let us see," he murmured, gazing toward the cityscape. "Who wishes to play?" Back in his apartment, the Joker held up 2 vials of partially synthesized compounds, examining them against the city lights. "Step 1, he whispered. "Not mass chaos, not yet. First, he would test the Senate's composure. A whisper here, a scandal there, a misdirected accusation. The Republic prided itself on debate. He intended to turn debate into combustion. And somewhere in the heart of Coruscant, the foundation of democracy trembled, ever so slightly. The Joker smiled wider. This was going to be fun. The first toxin was imperfect. The Joker stood in a rented laboratory space tucked behind a legitimate pharmaceutical distributor in the mid-level Senate district. The owner believed he was funding a private research consultant studying stress response suppressants for clone trauma recovery. The credits had been persuasive. On the central table, vapor rose from a thin glass cylinder containing a pale emerald mist. The compound shimmered faintly under sterile lights. He adjusted the mixture with surgical precision. Galactic chemistry had surprised him. Different base compounds, different neural receptors, but the principle remained unchanged. Interrupt the amygdala's control loop, overstimulate the humor response centers, and suppress higher judgment. Laughter was merely neurological betrayal. He inhaled a controlled microdose through a rebreather. 10 seconds. His lips twitched. 20 seconds. A giggle slipped out. Genuine. 30 seconds. He stabilized himself against the table, grinning uncontrollably as mild euphoria surged through his system. Promising. The effect faded within 2 minutes. Not lethal, not permanent, just enough to destabilize. He removed the rebreather and wiped tears from his eyes. "Oh, Coruscant," he murmured between chuckles. "You're going to love this." His first real target was not a senator. It was an aide. Keelia Vaughn, junior assistant to Senator Tosk, was ambitious, discreet, and exhausted. She worked late hours inside the outer administrative corridors of the Galactic Senate, drafting position statements and filtering classified briefings before they reached her employer. The Joker arranged an introduction through a mutual business contact from the previous gathering. He presented himself as a policy analyst offering strategic insight into public sentiment metrics. Keelia agreed to meet him in a private consultation suite overlooking the Senate dome. The room was sleek and quiet. Holographic projectors hummed softly between them as traffic drifted in slow, luminous streams outside the transparisteel window. He spoke calmly at first, measured observations about declining public trust. Data patterns, voter unrest, all fabricated but convincing. Keelia leaned forward, intrigued. "Your projections suggest a destabilization event within 3 months," she said. "Unless," he replied gently, "the narrative shifts." She frowned. "Narrative?" He smiled and reached for a small inhaler resting beside his data pad. "A little stress relief," he explained casually. She waved it off at first. He insisted lightly. "You look exhausted." After a moment's hesitation, she accepted it. 1 breath. Just 1. He watched carefully. 10 seconds passed. She blinked. 20 seconds. Her lips twitched. 30. A quiet giggle escaped her throat. She covered her mouth in embarrassment. "I'm sorry." 40 seconds. Laughter burst out uncontrollably. Not hysterical, just inappropriate. She tried to compose herself as tears formed in her eyes. This isn't funny." But she couldn't stop. He remained perfectly composed, observing the neurological cascade with clinical fascination. Within 90 seconds, the effect began to fade. Confusion replaced mirth. "What was that?" she demanded, suddenly aware something was wrong. "A test," he replied softly. Her hand moved toward the comm panel. He leaned forward slightly, voice lowering. "You just laughed uncontrollably in a Senate consultation chamber. Imagine if that happened mid-session, during a vote, during a security briefing." Her eyes widened. "Who are you?" He smiled wider. "A concerned citizen." He stood, adjusting his coat. "Don't worry, you're perfectly safe. The compound degrades rapidly." He paused at the doorway. "But imagine if it didn't." 2 days later, the first public incident occurred. During a heated debate regarding additional emergency funding for Outer Rim defense fleets, Senator Veldrin Tosk rose to deliver a fiery condemnation of separatist aggression. Mid-sentence, his composure shattered. A small concealed vapor emitter placed beneath his podium during a routine maintenance window activated. Invisible. Odorless. Within seconds, Tosk's voice cracked. A chuckle slipped out. The chamber fell silent. He attempted to continue. Another laugh burst free, and then another. Within moments, he was gripping the podium, laughing uncontrollably as holographic pods hovered in stunned silence around the central platform. Some senators stared in confusion, others in alarm. Tosk collapsed to one knee, tears streaming down his face, unable to stop. Security rushed forward, the broadcast cut abruptly. Across Coruscant, citizens watched the interruption with disbelief. Holonet commentators scrambled to explain the event, as a stress-induced breakdown. But rumors spread instantly. Was it illness? Sabotage? A separatist attack? Inside his private office, Chancellor Palpatine watched the footage twice. He did not smile, he did not frown, he simply observed. Fear in the Senate was useful, unpredictable humiliation was not. This act did not strengthen his position. It destabilized optics. His fingers tightened slightly against his chair's armrest. Interesting, very interesting. In the Jedi Temple, while the Council convened in uneasy silence, Master Windu replayed the incident. This was not the Force, he stated firmly. No, Yoda agreed. Different, this disturbance is. Chemical analysis from Senate security indicates airborne compound, reported another master. Unknown origin. Windu's eyes narrowed. The separatists? Unlikely, replied Ki-Adi-Mundi. Too theatrical. Yoda closed his eyes slowly. Clouded by chaos.
As we are. The Joker watched the Senate meltdown from a cafe balcony, sipping stim tea. Citizens around him argued loudly. It's war fatigue. It's a bio-attack. It's corruption, he grinned. Perfect. The toxin had lasted only 90 seconds. But the doubt? That would last weeks. He leaned back, enjoying the skyline. Phase 1, he whispered. He didn't want mass casualties. He wanted erosion, trust dissolving, confidence cracking.
Because systems didn't collapse from explosions. They collapsed when people stopped believing in them. And somewhere high above, Palpatine felt the pattern shifting. Not toward rebellion, not toward Sith dominance, but toward unpredictability. The Joker raised his cup in a mock toast toward the distant Senate dome. Let's see how tight your little plan is, he murmured. The game was no longer theoretical, it was public. And Coruscant was starting to laugh. The Senate incident did not fade, it multiplied. Holonet commentators replayed Senator Tosk's collapse in endless loops. Analysts debated neurochemical warfare. Outer Rim delegates demanded investigation into possible separatist infiltration. Core world loyalists insisted it was exhaustion from wartime strain. Within 48 hours, 3 additional minor officials experienced similar episodes. All brief, all non-lethal, all humiliating. While the Joker watched the chaos from different vantage points each time, sometimes in a crowded transit hub, sometimes in a quiet upper-level lounge where wealthy citizens whispered conspiracies over expensive wine. He adjusted the dosage carefully. Never fatal, never widespread, just enough to keep everyone uneasy. He wasn't attacking bodies, he was attacking credibility. The real shift came when the Jedi were formally assigned to investigate. 2 Jedi Knights arrived at the latest incident site inside a Senate administrative corridor, robes flowing, expressions controlled. Clone troopers secured the perimeter while forensic teams scanned for residue. The Joker observed from across the hall, disguised in a technician's uniform he had borrowed permanently from a distracted maintenance worker. He studied the Jedi with open fascination. They moved differently than politicians, centered, measured, dangerous. And he felt no tremor in the Force, because he did not touch it, but he sensed their discipline. One of them paused suddenly, gaze sweeping the corridor. The Joker lowered his eyes and adjusted a control panel convincingly. The Jedi lingered, then continued on. He exhaled slowly. So, he murmured under his breath, the wizard police are involved. He would need to adapt. The Force complicated chaos. Inside the Jedi Temple, the council chamber hummed with tension, while Master Windu addressed the holographic projection of Senate security data. These incidents are escalating in symbolic impact, he said. Public confidence is eroding. "Manipulation, this is," Yoda replied softly. "Not war tactic." "Someone is applying pressure," added Shark T. "Deliberately, strategically." Windu's brow furrowed. But to what end? No demands? No claims of responsibility? Yoda's eyes narrowed. Chaos for chaos' sake. The chamber fell quiet. The Sith sought control. All the separatists sought independence. This felt different. Chancellor Palpatine convened a private security summit in his executive office overlooking the Senate district. The skyline shimmered beyond massive windows as evening traffic carved glowing lanes through the sky. Masameda stood at his side. "Public trust is declining, Your Excellency," Ameda said carefully. "Some senators question whether emergency powers should continue." Palpatine's expression remained serene. Then we must reassure them. Jedi involvement has intensified. A subtle flicker crossed Palpatine's eyes. "Good," he replied smoothly. "Let them chase shadows." He felt the disturbance again, subtle but persistent. Not a dark side signature, not light, a void of intention in the Force, as though the perpetrator operated entirely outside its current. That intrigued him more than the attacks themselves. The Joker escalated carefully. His next move was not chemical. It was informational. Using access codes extracted from Keelia Vaughn, who still did not fully understand how she'd compromised her credentials, he intercepted minor logistical memos between military procurement offices and select senators. Nothing classified, but enough to manipulate. He altered shipment dates for clone armor deliveries. He redirected a Senate audit notification to a rival office. Small bureaucratic disruptions, individually insignificant, collectively destabilizing. Within a week, accusations began flying across committee floors. Mismanagement, corruption, sabotage. The Joker watched from the public gallery as senators argued with visible frustration. He leaned over the railing slightly, smiling as voices rose below him in the vast amphitheater of the Galactic Senate. The chamber's acoustics carried outrage beautifully. He adored it. But he made a mistake, a small one. In his eagerness, he remained in the gallery too long. Below, to Jedi Knight Anakin Skywalker, assigned as security liaison during heightened tensions, felt something. Not a dark presence, not even malicious intent in the Force, but amusement. He glanced upward toward the public seating. His eyes landed briefly on a pale-faced man, smiling broadly, while others around him appeared anxious. Anakin frowned. The man's expression didn't match the mood of the room. It was delighted, almost hungry. Their eyes met for half a second, but the Joker tilted his head and gave the faintest wave. Anakin stiffened, and the stranger turned and disappeared into the crowd. Anakin moved immediately, pushing through the gallery corridor, but the man was gone. Security scans revealed nothing unusual. No weapons, no Force signature, just a citizen. Still, the unease lingered. That evening, Anakin reported the encounter to Master Windu. "A civilian?" Windu asked. "Yes," Anakin replied. "But he was enjoying it. All of it." Windu studied him carefully. "Many beings enjoy political chaos. This was different," Anakin insisted. "It felt intentional." Windu considered this. "We will monitor." Anakin left dissatisfied. He had seen that smile before, on criminals, warlords, even separatist commanders, but never inside the Senate gallery. The Joker returned to his apartment and replayed the brief eye contact in his mind. "A hero," he mused. The young Jedi's stare had contained suspicion and heat. Interesting. A wild card, he would avoid direct confrontation. For now. He turned toward his growing collection of chemical samples. Phase 2 required something louder, not deadly, but unforgettable. He held up a new vial, this one more concentrated, its emerald vapor swirling thicker than before. "Let's raise the volume," he whispered. High above Coruscant, storm clouds gathered. A lightning flickered across the horizon as if the planet itself sensed approaching instability. In his office, Palpatine felt the ripples converging, the Senate fracturing, the Jedi distracted, public doubt spreading. It should have pleased him. Instead, it complicated timing. And Palpatine did not tolerate variables. He closed his eyes, reaching deeper into the dark side. "Reveal yourself," he murmured softly. Far below, the Joker began assembling miniature dispersal units designed for enclosed chambers. The next event would not target one senator. It would target the entire chamber, not to kill, but to humiliate the Republic on a galactic scale. He chuckled quietly as thunder rolled above the city. Two masterminds now moved pieces across Coruscant. One sought absolute control, the other sought absolute collapse, and neither intended to lose. The storm over Coruscant broke the same night the Senate convened for an emergency security session. Rain streaked down the towering transparisteel walls of the Senate dome, distorting the city lights into wavering rivers of gold and white. Inside, repulsor lift pods hovered in concentric circles around the central Chancellor's platform. Voices overlapped in tense waves, amplified by the chamber's acoustics. The Republic was afraid, and fear made procedure frantic. Chancellor Palpatine stood composed at the center podium, hands folded within his sleeves, expression measured. "We will not allow disorder to undermine our unity," he declared, voice steady as distant thunder rolled beyond the dome. "The Jedi Order is investigating these incidents thoroughly." Above him, in the public observation tier, a maintenance drone drifted silently along the ventilation lattice. No one noticed that its route had been subtly altered. Hours earlier, the Joker had infiltrated the Senate infrastructure under the guise of a contracted environmental systems technician. His forged credentials, enhanced by carefully manipulated internal audit logs, had passed inspection. He hummed softly while attaching microdispersal capsules into the air filtration nodes that fed the central chamber. The new compound was stronger, not lethal, but amplified. He had adjusted the molecular structure to bypass standard atmospheric scanners by mimicking harmless industrial coolant traces. It would remain invisible until activated. He stepped back, admiring the hidden architecture. "So many moving parts," he whispered, "and all of them trust each other." Trust was such a fragile material. Inside the chamber, debate intensified. A core world senator demanded expanded surveillance authority. An Outer Rim delegate accused the Republic of authoritarian drift. Pods drifted slightly closer to the center as speakers leaned forward, voices rising. The Joker waited. Timing mattered. He wanted maximum visibility. He activated the trigger from a discreet device hidden in his glove. A pulse moved through the ventilation grid. Colorless vapor cascaded downward, undetectable in the chamber's vast air volume. 10 seconds, 20. The first cough echoed faintly.
Then a snort of suppressed laughter. One senator blinked rapidly, confused. Another covered her mouth as a giggle escaped involuntarily. The chamber hesitated. Then it erupted, laughter, wild, uncontrolled, cascading from dozens of pods at once, not joyful, not voluntary. Senators doubled over in their hovering platforms, tears streaming down faces twisted between mirth and humiliation. Some tried to speak but dissolved into hysterics.
while others slammed control panels in desperation as their pods wobbled. The sound filled the dome, a grotesque parody of celebration. Holonet feeds broadcast the spectacle live for nearly 15 seconds before cutting abruptly. At the center podium, Palpatine did not laugh. He stood perfectly still as the vapor dissipated around him. His eyes narrowed slightly. Interesting. The dispersal pattern had avoided his immediate air column. Deliberate or coincidence? Security alarms blared. A Jedi leapt into motion, activating rebreathers. Clone troopers sealed exits, but the damage was done. The Republic's highest legislative body had become a circus before the entire galaxy. In the Jedi Temple, emergency signals flooded the council chamber. Master Windu rose instantly. "This is escalation." "Bold, this one is," Yoda murmured gravely. "Not Sith," Windu said firmly. This is mockery." Yoda's gaze drifted toward the distant Senate district through the open archways of the temple. Dangerous mockery can be? The Joker exited through a maintenance shaft moments before the lockdown protocols sealed upper corridors. He removed his technician uniform inside a mag train restroom and emerged minutes later dressed in civilian attire, blending into the growing panic in surrounding districts. Public screens flickered back online. Commentators were shaken. Eyes at this unprecedented breach. Security failure at the highest level. Is the Republic losing control? Citizens argued in the streets despite the rain. Some blamed the Separatists, others blamed the Jedi. A few whispered about staged theatrics designed to justify harsher emergency laws. The Joker listened to them all with quiet satisfaction. "Division?" he murmured, watching a heated argument escalate between two strangers outside a transit station. Or how beautiful. In his private office, Palpatine dismissed all aides. He replayed the Senate footage alone, frame by frame. The dispersal pattern was precise, non-lethal, strategic humiliation, not an assassination attempt, not an overthrow, a message. Palpatine allowed himself the smallest smile. "You wish to embarrass me," he said softly to the empty room. He reached out with the Force, probing the currents of fear and unrest spiraling across Coruscant. There. A flicker again. Or not dark, not light, chaotic, unanchored. Whoever orchestrated this did not seek power. They sought disruption. That made them unpredictable, and unpredictability required containment. Meanwhile, the Joker returned to his apartment, rain-soaked but exhilarated. He peeled off his gloves and placed the now empty trigger device on the table beside his chemical notes. He turned on the holonet and watched analysis devolve into accusation. Senators demanded resignations. Security chiefs blamed infrastructure sabotage. Public trust plummeted in real time. He laughed quietly, not maniacally, not loudly, just contentedly. "Systems fail when exposed," he mused. "All you have to do is remove the mask." He approached the window overlooking the glowing skyline. Somewhere in that vast city the Chancellor was recalculating. He could feel it, not through mysticism, but through intuition. A strategist had noticed him. Good. He preferred worthy opponents. At the Jedi Temple, Anakin Skywalker stood on a balcony overlooking the city. Rain streaked across the skyline. He replayed the image of the pale-faced man smiling in the gallery days earlier. The laughter in the chamber had felt wrong, artificial, engineered. He clenched his jaw. "This isn't over," he muttered. He was right, because the Joker had no intention of stopping at humiliation. The The Senate had laughed. Next, he would make them turn on each other. And as thunder rolled over Coruscant once more, two minds, one rooted in control, one in chaos, prepared for a deeper confrontation. The war outside the capital was nearing its end, but inside the Republic's heart, a different war had just begun. The days following the Senate incident were a fevered blur of accusations, investigations, and unease. Coruscant itself seemed to mirror the political instability. The city's vertical highways choked with traffic as citizens argued over every newscast, every rumor, every subtle misstep. The Joker moved through it like a shadow among the fluorescent haze, unseen yet omnipresent, delighting in the fracturing of perception. He had refined his methods. My Phase 3 would not rely solely on chemicals. Information, timing, and perception were now the weapons. Every minor bureaucratic miscommunication, every misplaced report, and every questionable security alert had been subtly manipulated by his unseen hand. Senators now questioned each other openly, fingers pointing, accusations muttered beneath breath as the Republic's veneer of unity began to crack. He took a moment to observe from a vantage point near the Coruscant Spire's mid-level districts. The traffic below shimmered with light reflecting off rain-slicked surfaces. Citizens argued in hovertrams, some waving at projection displays in sheer frustration. A minor dispute over transport fees escalated to a brawl. He chuckled softly, sipping a cup of hot beverage stolen from a cafe that overlooked a busy transit node. Chaos, even small-scale, was art. Anakin Skywalker had become acutely aware of this pattern. He moved like a predator through Coruscant, not hunting the Joker directly, but seeking traces of his orchestration. Clone troopers patrolled corridors, scanning for the last few physical traces of the dispersal devices. Jedi informants monitored air quality sensors, trying to detect the chemical signature. But every measure seemed one step behind. Each time the trail appeared solid, it evaporated, sometimes literally, sometimes metaphorically. "You're letting him dictate the pace," Master Windu said, standing in the observation chamber overlooking the Senate district. His hands were folded tightly, his eyes scanning the holographic feeds of disrupted communications. He controls the environment, he chooses the escalation, and we respond. Anakin frowned, tension visible in his shoulders. "I've traced movement patterns, Master. He knows the city too well."
And he anticipates Jedi intervention before it begins. Windu's eyes hardened. "We must adapt. He is intelligent, yes, but chaotic does not mean invincible. Someone this precise, this theatrical, will make mistakes, and when he does, we will be ready." Yoda's gaze turned inward, meditative yet strained. "Clouded the path is. Strong in cunning he is. Predictable he will not be. Dangerous, yes, but learnable the patterns are." Meanwhile, the Joker had shifted focus.
Phase 3 required a personal touch. Bureaucracy could be destabilized remotely, but individuals could be influenced in ways technology could not reach. He had identified 3 key senators whose decisions could sway entire committees. Each had a weakness: fear, vanity, and ambition, and each was perfectly susceptible to suggestion. His first approach was subtle, a cryptic note left in a personal data pad, signed with a pseudonym. The message contained an innocuous warning about a possible oversight in the budget allocation. The senator spent the day obsessing over it. His thoughts became tangled. Meetings that normally lasted an hour stretched to 3, with assistants unsure how to contain his nervous energy. The effect was not visible to others, yet it changed decisions. votes shifted in marginal ways and committee outcomes subtly warped. The Joker smiled. Chaos could be architectural just as easily as chemical. One carefully placed thought, one whispered suggestion could ripple outward in ways no one would suspect. And the more he studied human behavior, the more he realized the galaxy was a canvas waiting to be warped. High above, Palpatine had grown intrigued. He had watched the escalating incidents closely, noting patterns that even the Jedi had not fully discerned. The perpetrator's intellect was formidable, strategic, precise, and entirely unaligned. Lord Palpatine reached his fingers across the Force, probing for the faintest signature of intent. He found nothing conclusive, only a shimmer of unpredictability. Interesting. Unlike the Sith, unlike the Separatists, this individual operated outside known structures. He was a true wildcard. At the same time, within the Jedi Temple, subtle tensions spread. Masters debated whether this threat required new protocols, enhanced surveillance, or direct confrontation. And Anakin, increasingly frustrated by the Joker's invisibility, sensed a challenge beyond mere investigation. He felt a personal connection in some ineffable way. The Joker's audacity, his deliberate subversion of order, resonated with Anakin's own experiences with authority, chaos, and morality. The Jedi Knight was both infuriated and fascinated. The Joker's next move was audacious. He attended a gala hosted by a prominent core world industrialist, using forged invitations and a careful disguise. While others dined and discussed the Republic's latest military procurement contracts, he mingled casually, inserting small suggestions, highlighting minor grievances, and planting seeds of paranoia among influential elites. Every whispered observation, every sly smile, every barely perceptible comment altered the flow of conversation. By the end of the evening, alliances had shifted. Committees reconsidered decisions. Plans that had seemed stable only hours earlier now wavered. As he departed through service corridors, unseen yet observed by a single Jedi stationed in the ventilation system, he paused and whispered to himself. Phase 3, complete. Observe the subtle collapse, the tiniest crack, and the structure begins to fail. The city seemed to pulse in response. Rain fell harder, echoing against the domes. Street-level disputes flared into chaos. Political offices buzzed with confusion and minor conflicts, all traceable to invisible hands. And throughout it all, the Joker moved like a conductor of dissonance, shaping events without ever touching them directly. In the shadows, Anakin Skywalker continued his pursuit, frustration mounting. He had observed patterns, traced incidents, and even felt the Joker's presence briefly through a fleeting glimpse. Yet every time he drew near, the trail disappeared, as though the Joker had anticipated his moves before they began. The Jedi Knight's mind raced, seeking an angle, a vulnerability, a mistake. And slowly the realization settled in. This was not a battle of strength, but a battle of wit, patience, and perception. Two minds, two philosophies, one city teetering on the edge. Chaos against order, manipulation against discipline. The stage was set for a confrontation that neither the Jedi nor the Republic had anticipated. The Joker's next act required precision, audacity, and a flair for spectacle. Phase 4, an event so public, so undeniable, that the galaxy itself could no longer dismiss the intruder as a mere anomaly. He turned his attention to the Senate's emergency communications hub, a sprawling complex of control nodes, data archives, and real-time broadcast arrays. In one stroke, he could amplify fear, chaos, and doubt across multiple sectors, all while remaining invisible in plain sight. He entered the facility under the guise of a senior repair technician, credentials meticulously forged to bypass both electronic scanners and procedural scrutiny. The hallway's soft hum of energy conduits and the faint smell of recycled air did nothing to betray the magnitude of the manipulation about to unfold. Every security camera, every motion detector, every access terminal had been studied and accounted for. Timing, he reminded himself, was as vital as the chemical sequences he had perfected. Inside the control room, servers blinked in synchronized rhythm, projecting the Senate's operations across Coruscant and beyond. He approached the main terminal and began weaving his digital signatures seamlessly into the existing system. Subtle alterations, small enough to avoid detection, large enough to produce cascading miscommunications, traced through communications arrays, broadcast schedules, and hollow conference feeds. A senator requesting secure minutes from a committee received falsified reports. Broadcasts intended for internal review aired publicly. Emails, holonet briefings, and internal memos were warped into deliberate misinformation. And then came the pièce de résistance, a scheduled Senate floor session broadcasting live to the core worlds, the mid-rim and the outer rim sectors simultaneously. Using a minor micro-vapor dispersal device hidden in the chamber's ventilation system, but he timed it to coincide with a critical vote on a controversial outer rim security initiative. As senators convened, the Joker activated the device. Within seconds, subtle mist wove through the air, imperceptible to security personnel. Laughter began, suppressed at first, then escalating. Members tried to speak, but their voices faltered, interrupted by giggles, snorts, and sudden bursts of uncontainable mirth. Hollow projections transmitted every hiccup, every awkward collapse, every involuntary squeal to the entire Republic. Chancellor Palpatine watched from the podium, hands folded. His calm gaze never left the unfolding scene, yet beneath his composure, calculation thrummed. This was not mere sabotage, it was a statement. The Joker had demonstrated not only technical skill, but strategic understanding of the Republic's weakest points: trust, decorum, and predictability. Clone troopers scrambled, attempting to contain the incident. Jedi leapt into action, force-guiding senators away from hazards. Yet the Joker had accounted for every contingency. He observed from a distance, a slight smile playing across his pale face. The chaos was not random, it was architecture. By the time the mist dissipated, the entire chamber had been rendered a theater of humiliation and confusion. The vote had failed, procedural orders were in disarray, and senior senators were openly accusing one another of sabotage. Holonet feeds replayed the incidents, commentary spiraling into panic and speculation. Yet the Joker's personal thrill was the psychological edge, the unquantifiable fear and doubt that rippled outward. For even those untouched by the incident, knowing that a single individual could infiltrate the Senate, manipulate events, and escape detection, created a pervasive unease. The Republic, he realized, had a fragile faith in stability. Once shaken, it could fracture entirely from within. Meanwhile, Anakin Skywalker and Master Windu analyzed footage in real time. The Jedi had no trace, no force signature, and no direct evidence. Yet instinct screamed at Anakin the Joker was deliberate, intelligent, and always 2 steps ahead. His pursuit had become more than a mission. It was now a chess match where every pawn, rook, and bishop could be manipulated, and every knight moved in ways the Jedi could not anticipate. The Joker returned to his sanctuary as Coruscant's storm grew darker, and observing the city lights refracted through relentless rain. He allowed himself a brief, genuine laugh, not as a tool, not as a message, but as pleasure. He had exposed the vulnerabilities of a system that prided itself on order. He had painted chaos in broad, indisputable strokes, and, most importantly, he had done so without ever revealing himself directly. But even he could feel the stirrings of a counterforce, the subtle, probing awareness of the Jedi and the calculating watch of Palpatine, and that knowledge did not deter him. It exhilarated him. Phase 4 had succeeded, but Phase 5, true disruption, was only beginning. Somewhere high above the city, the Joker whispered into the night, letting his words drift with the wind and rain. Let's see how far the House of Cards can fall. Phase 5 demanded escalation. The Joker knew the Republic had survived humiliation, but it had yet to feel true systemic uncertainty. A subtle attack on individual senators or procedural chaos could amuse and unsettle, but it would not bend the Republic toward real vulnerability. For that, he required confrontation on multiple levels: public spectacle, psychological tension, and manipulation of factional rivalries. His first target was the criminal underworld of Coruscant, but not the syndicates or huts directly, those were predictable, but smaller, agile networks of informants, fixers, and smugglers who moved within the shadows of the upper levels. He approached them under the guise of a high-stakes investor, offering security enhancements and financial opportunities in exchange for loyalty and discretion. No payment exchanged hands. Instead, promises of access, chaos, and influence were enough. Within hours, yet he had a network capable of intercepting communications, planting false information, and delivering targeted disruptions across multiple districts simultaneously. Meanwhile, the Jedi and Republic intelligence services struggled to respond. Anakin Skywalker, still obsessed with capturing or identifying the Joker, began coordinating with clone, intelligence units, and Senate security. Yet every plan they formulated seemed preempted, undermined by misinformation or clever misdirection. Or every attempt to corner the Joker only widened the scope of his manipulations. His mind was everywhere and nowhere, and the Force revealed nothing: no malevolence, no control, only cunning unpredictability. The Joker's next move was direct but indirect, a moral crucible designed to fracture alliances and test loyalties. He sent encrypted messages to a series of senators from disparate sectors, each containing subtle misinformation about a fabricated conspiracy within the Senate, one claiming the Outer Rim representatives were plotting against the core worlds, another suggesting the Mid-Rim industrialists were hoarding resources in violation of emergency regulations. The messages were tailored with psychological precision. He had learned, through careful observation, which individuals were ambitious, which were fearful, and which were vain. Each message struck at a personal weakness, ensuring maximum impact. The result was instantaneous. In committees, senators began confronting each other, voices raised, accusations flying. Some attempted to collaborate only to be derailed by conflicting intelligence. Minor brawls broke out between aides. Protocols eroded under scrutiny and paranoia. By manipulating perception rather than relying solely on chemical influence, the Joker had achieved an effect far more destabilizing than physical disruption could provide. The Republic began to distrust itself. Above it all, Chancellor Palpatine watched silently. Palpatine understood the genius of the intruder, recognizing the unique blend of psychological acumen and strategic mischief. Unlike a separatist strike or Sith plot, which could be anticipated through motive and pattern, the Joker operated without loyalty, ideology, or need for recognition, truly unpredictable. Palpatine's fingers tightened subtly on the edge of his podium. "Interesting," he murmured. "But chaos alone does not achieve power." The Joker's most audacious act, however, was his direct engagement with Anakin Skywalker. He allowed himself to be glimpsed fleetingly in crowded corridors and public transport hubs, ensuring that the Jedi Knight's pursuit remained focused but misdirected. Each appearance was deliberate, a glimpse of white face, and a flash of green eyes, enough to establish presence without confrontation. Anakin's frustration grew. He could feel the Joker's influence everywhere, yet could not anticipate his next move. This psychological interplay escalated to a precarious balance. The Joker began sending cryptic messages directly to the Jedi via holocom devices, embedding riddles and provocations that forced Anakin and his allies to second-guess motives and prioritize impossible choices. Each puzzle had multiple solutions, each seemingly logical option laden with potential consequence. The Jedi were forced into reactive strategies, responding to stimuli rather than initiating control. The Republic's bureaucracy, the criminal underworld, and the Jedi themselves became pieces on a board the Joker had designed. Every faction's actions amplified the other's instability. The Jedi were distracted, Senate members were paralyzed by uncertainty, and Palpatine's careful calculations were complicated by a variable he could not control. By now, the Joker's influence had become pervasive. The city of Coruscant seemed to pulse with tension, citizens whispering rumors, politicians questioning colleagues, and security personnel acting with increasing suspicion toward one another. It was not destruction, it was corrosion, a slow, unstoppable unraveling of confidence, procedure, and trust. Yet the Joker's satisfaction was not complete. His greatest thrill lay not in the immediate chaos, but in the moral ambiguity he introduced. Senators accused each other, some tried to justify underhanded actions to preserve reputations, and some even considered violating laws they would have once obeyed blindly. Each compromise, each ethical deviation, was a small victory in his long game. High above, lightning split the stormy Coruscant sky, illuminating the domes and spires in brilliant, transient arcs. The Joker watched from his perch, a pale face gleaming in the reflection of neon lights, hands clasped behind his back. "Phase 5, he whispered, "and now the dance truly begins." The city did not know it yet, but order itself had been challenged. And two powerful forces, the Jedi's sense of justice and the Sith's lust for control, were about to intersect with an agent of pure chaos. The crescendo of the Joker's campaign was inevitable. Phase 6 was not subtle. It would be impossible to ignore, undeniable and dangerously close to breaking the balance of the Senate entirely. He had destabilized individuals, manipulated information, and leveraged Coruscant's criminal networks. Now he would confront the very heart of power, the Senate chamber itself, with the Jedi and Chancellor Palpatine watching closely. He entered with a ventilation system, his movements precise, rehearsed and silent. The maze of ducts had become his familiar domain, mapped meticulously in mental diagrams, memorized in hours of patient observation. Each air vent, maintenance ladder, and access hatch was calculated to minimize risk while maximizing effect. He carried only 2 items, a compact dispersal device enhanced for greater reach, and a small holoprojector capable of broadcasting a message directly to the entire Senate floor. The chamber was in session, discussing a new treaty with several outer rim systems. Senators hovered in their pods, debating procedural minutiae. Jedi liaisons hovered nearby, alert but unaware of the Joker's presence above. Clone troopers monitored the gallery. Everything seemed orderly, too orderly, that was the point. He activated the device, releasing a vapor that subtly altered perception without harming the body. This time, it was designed not for laughter, but for disorientation. As Senator's coordination faltered, pods drifted off course, and minor collisions ensued. A holographic display flickered erratically, projecting fragments of false votes and invented communications. The session devolved into chaos. Simultaneously, the Joker activated the holo projector. A pale face appeared in the chamber, enormous, mocking, with green eyes glinting. He addressed the entire Senate in a calm, deliberate tone. Order is an illusion, control is a myth.
Hey, you are puppets who believe in the safety of rules, and yet here you are, struggling to follow your own. Gasps and screams erupted across the chamber. Clone troopers attempted to contain panic. Jedi leapt forward, lightsabers illuminating the chaos, but the Joker had calculated even this. The disorientation ensured that any direct approach would be met with confusion and unpredictability, giving him ample time to exit unseen. At that precise moment, Anakin Skywalker acted.
He used the Force to trace the disorientation back to its source, realizing the Joker's location within the vent system. His approach was cautious, strategic, yet urgent. The young Jedi's blade hummed as he prepared to confront the intruder directly, finally putting his presence within reach. The Joker sensed him. A thrill ran through him, a duel of mind, perception, and timing rather than mere physical strength. He spoke, voice echoing faintly in the vent. "You chase shadows, young Jedi. But what if the shadow you fear is part of yourself?" Anakin's response was sharp. "I don't fear chaos, I stop it." "Ah, yes," the Joker whispered, almost delightedly. "But stopping chaos is different from understanding it." Their confrontation was immediate, yet indirect. Anakin moved through the ducts while the Joker used the maze to create unpredictable movement patterns, forcing the Jedi to rely on intuition rather than visibility. Every corner was a riddle, every vent a potential trap. "Anakin outside," Palpatine observed through a subtle Force probe. He had anticipated disruption, but the Joker's audacity was unprecedented. Unlike the Separatists or a rogue Sith, this agent operated without allegiance, ideology, or predictability. Palpatine's interest sharpened. He did not yet understand the Joker fully, but he sensed potential utility, or at least the opportunity for learning. Within the chamber, chaos reigned. Senators, uncertain whom to trust, began openly accusing each other of sabotage. Procedural orders failed as holographic records flickered with false information. For a brief, intoxicating moment, the Republic teetered on the brink of collapse, not by external threat, but internal disarray. The Joker emerged finally, stepping lightly onto a maintenance catwalk. He allowed a momentary glance downward, watching the scene unfold. He had created not just chaos, but an environment where fear, uncertainty, and mistrust could propagate like wildfire. Anakin confronted him directly. Their eyes met. The Jedi's anger and sense of duty clashed against the Joker's cold amusement. For a heartbeat, it was a standoff of philosophies, order versus chaos, discipline versus ingenuity. The Joker smirked. "You seek to capture me, but you will never see the whole picture. I am everywhere and nowhere. The city itself is my accomplice." Anakin ignited his lightsaber fully. What is its blue glow illuminating the Joker's pale face? For a moment, the air seemed charged with anticipation. Two forces prepared to collide, one governed by skill and morality, the other by intellect and unpredictability. Yet the Joker did not fight physically. Instead, he vanished into the shadows, leaving only the echoes of his laughter and a trail of uncertainty. Anakin was left with frustration and the chilling realization that stopping him would require more than raw power. It would require understanding, ingenuity, and perhaps bending one's own principles to match the chaos he wielded so effortlessly. The Senate remained in turmoil, the Jedi unsettled, and Palpatine intrigued. And above it all, the Joker prepared his next move, knowing the true game had only just begun. The city of Coruscant had become a theatre of tension, every district a stage where the Joker's influence rippled unseen. Even after his direct confrontation with Anakin, he remained a step ahead, orchestrating events with precision. His goal was no longer mere amusement or temporary chaos. It was to demonstrate the fragility of institutions and the malleability of order itself. From the vantage of an abandoned spire, he observed the glow of the city below. Senate pods floated unevenly in the dome, clone troopers patrolled corridors with heightened alert, and Jedi patrols scanned for anomalies. Yet, even as the Republic reacted, his manipulations spread quietly through networks, communications, and personal interactions. A whispered suggestion, a planted document, a falsified report, each small action amplified across sectors. The city had become a living chessboard, and every citizen, senator, and officer a potential piece in his grand design. Within the Jedi Temple, Master Windu and Yoda convened with Anakin and several other council members. The reports were staggering. Subtle factional breakdowns, unexpected conflicts among senators, and unusual behavior from core and mid-rim representatives. Attempts to trace the disruptions yielded no clear evidence. The Joker left nothing physical, no force signature, no traceable mark. "This is unlike anything we have faced," Windu admitted, leaning over the council table. "Not Sith."
It's not separatists, someone outside our understanding, outside conventional motives. Yoda's ears twitched with concern. Chaos incarnate it is, pattern there is, but intent hidden, dangerous, very. Anakin's frustration grew. He had glimpsed the Joker, chased him through ducts, and faced his provocations firsthand. Yet even now, he felt that every action he took was anticipated, countered, or rendered ambiguous. The Joker was not just clever, he was a disruptor of perception itself.
Meanwhile, the Joker prepared for the final stage, a calculated public spectacle that would force multiple factions to collide. The target was the Galactic Communications Hub, a massive structure responsible for distributing Senate feeds, news broadcasts, and planetary alerts across the entire core and mid-rim sectors. Access was heavily secured, monitored by Jedi, clone troopers, and advanced security systems. He entered through a rarely used maintenance conduit, his movements fluid and silent. The hum of the facility's energy conduits was almost musical, guiding his steps as he navigated to the central broadcast chamber. There he placed a series of small, precise devices capable of subtly altering transmissions, embedding subtle misinformation, visual distortions, and timing discrepancies. A message, carefully crafted, would appear on holonet feeds simultaneously across multiple sectors. The Republic under siege, factions turning against each other, leaders undermined. And then came the personal touch, a holographic appearance, this time addressed to both the Republic and the Jedi, visible on every feed. His pale face loomed larger than life, green eyes gleaming with amusement. "Order is fragile," he intoned. "Trust is an illusion. And in this galaxy, you are all dancing on strings you cannot see." The broadcast caused immediate visible effects. Panic spread in markets, transport hubs clogged with anxious citizens, and political offices erupted in accusations and emergency meetings. Jedi patrols and clone units worked overtime to stabilize situations, but the pervasiveness of the Joker's manipulation left no clear entry point. Every action seemed already anticipated, every reaction foreseen. High above, Palpatine studied the unfolding events with keen interest. The Joker was unpredictable, but not reckless. He challenged order without creating direct catastrophe. Palpatine's mind weighed the possibilities: ally, tool, threat. The Joker's existence in the Republic presented opportunity, yet he remained cautious. Chaos without control was a double-edged blade. Anakin, meanwhile, had tracked the Joker to the communications hub, sensing a subtle pattern in his methods. He realized that stopping him would require more than force or skill. It required understanding the logic behind chaos itself. The Joker, for all his madness, had method. The Jedi Knight prepared, not for battle, but for the ultimate psychological confrontation, knowing the Joker thrived on the anticipation of pursuit. As night fell over Coruscant, rain streaked the spires in silver arcs, reflecting the lights of a city that felt on edge. The Joker watched from his vantage, a satisfied smirk curving his pale lips. He had disrupted, manipulated, and exposed vulnerabilities. The Republic had been shaken to its core, not through destruction, but through doubt, uncertainty, and the realization that a single agent of chaos could manipulate countless systems with skill and subtlety. His gaze drifted to the horizon. The Jedi and Palpatine were aware, intrigued, frustrated, but powerless to predict every next move. That was the beauty of his existence in this galaxy, a force that could not be catalogued, measured, or controlled. Phase 6 complete? Yet the Joker knew this was only the beginning. The seeds of uncertainty had been sown, and the galaxy itself was becoming his canvas. Everywhere, people whispered, speculated, and doubted, not because he had forced them, but because they had allowed themselves to be led by perception, curiosity, and fear. The storm above Coruscant began to break, but in the heart of the city, chaos persisted. And the Joker, the architect of this new reality, disappeared once more into the shadows, leaving only laughter echoing across the domes, corridors, and alleys, a reminder that control, no matter how absolute it seemed, could always be challenged. The Joker's campaign had left the Republic fractured yet intact, destabilized yet functional. He had not destroyed the Senate or the Jedi, but he had exposed the vulnerabilities inherent in institutions, human perception, and the illusion of order. Coruscant, once a symbol of stability, now bore subtle scars: distrust among senators, anxiety in citizens, and hesitation within the Jedi ranks. And the city and the galaxy had glimpsed the potency of chaos unrestrained by ideology or loyalty. Anakin Skywalker stood overlooking the Senate district, the hum of repulsor lifts below, the rain glistening across the spires. He had faced the Joker, seen his methods, and understood that raw power alone could not defeat such an adversary. The confrontation demanded strategy, insight, and an understanding of human and galactic psychology. The young Jedi knew this was far from over. Palpatine's eyes, hidden in shadow, followed the subtle movements of political and social networks across Coruscant. He recognized the Joker's brilliance and unpredictability, an instrument that could, if carefully manipulated, become an asset or a threat. And somewhere in the city's shadows, the Joker smiled, knowing his true game had only begun. The seeds of disruption were planted, the players moved, and the galaxy would never see him or the chaos he represented the same way again.